can you help me to make sure I've got this turned on? Okay, so yesterday we were in the middle of the ISLM model and the open economy, so the Mundell-Fleming model. We're thinking about equilibrium and then going through the effects of shocks. What we added compared to the baseline ISLM model in the goods market is the effect of net exports. And we have a negative effect from domestic income, right? As we have an increase in income, our demand for imports increase, which ceteris paribus is going to decrease net exports. We now have a new exogenous variable, world income. Right? So when the rest of the world has this increase in income, they're going to demand more products, including ours, which will increase our exports. And then we also have a new variable that's going to be endogenous, and that is the real exchange rate at a given price level. It's the nominal exchange rate, right? That affects net exports negatively because of the Marshall-Lerner condition. Right? So the idea here, simply we can just read off the quantities here. When the real exchange rate goes up, so we have an appreciation, because in terms of the nominal exchange rate, but our currency increases in value. Right? This means we are able to afford more goods from abroad. Right? So we're going to demand more imports. We're going to buy more stuff from abroad. It's now cheaper. Right? When our currency appreciates in value, right? This means our currency is more expensive for foreigners to acquire, which makes purchasing our products for them more expensive. So their demand for our goods will go down, i.e. our exports will go down. And we have this price effect here with the Marshall, right? So this would be an effect, negative effect of the real interest rate or the real exchange rate. The Marshall-Lerner condition tells us that this quantity effect we just went through dominance, and so we're just going to write directly a net export function to have that outcome. Okay, so we have a new exogenous variable y star, but we have a new endogenous variable e, right? Our nominal exchange rate. So what's going to determine our nominal exchange rate? Well, the interaction on financial markets. We have international investors who are looking to maximize their returns, right? Just like we are looking to maximize perhaps our profit. If we see a different price for gold in Bangkok than in Ho Chi Minh City. Right? So here now we're going to compare the possibility. We have a portfolio of investments. We have bonds at home and bonds abroad. And if an interest rate changes, particularly if our domestic interest rate changes, if it goes up, then this makes ceteris paribus buying bonds in our country more attractive. They yield a higher return. So what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to sell some of my foreign bonds to buy more domestic bonds to take advantage of this higher interest rate. But it's not just me selling my foreign bonds, it's a lot of people. Now this interest rate abroad is set by the central bank abroad, so that can't change. So what's happening? We have a large-scale sale of, let's say, Bhutanese bonds. Right? We sell the Bhutanese bonds and we get these Bhutanese nguyen, and then we want to buy Vietnamese bonds, so we have to exchange the Bhutanese currency for dong. Right? So we have nguyen from Bhutan and we're trying to buy dong. But it's not just me, it's not just you, it's everybody involved in the financial markets. We have a very large, full-scale attempt to sell nguyen to buy dong. So what's going to happen? Just like in any marketplace, we're going to be bidding up the price of the dong in terms of nguyen. Okay, we're bidding up the price of the dong in terms of new movement. That means we have a real appreciation of our currency. No, wait, sorry, stop. We're bidding up the price. So we have to get more and more nguyen per dong, right? Yeah. Which means that each dong is worth more and more nguyen. It increases in value, the dong. Right, so we have an increase in our domestic interest rate, right? And this is going to be counteracted on the right-hand side, right, by the increase in our exchange rate. Right, we have negative, positive. Right, so essentially what ends up happening is the loss in value today of Bhutanese currency gives us an expected appreciation until the conclusion, to the end of the payout, maturity of the bond, is going to compensate us exactly for now the change in the interest rate. And if that wasn't the case, there would be an opportunity, a possibility to shift our portfolio in one or another direction. And everybody else will engage in this as well, so we put pressure on the exchange rate until this condition holds. And all this tells us, all this gives us is the return in dong of domestic bonds must be equal to the expected return in dong of a foreign bond. And if we increase the return of domestic bonds, the return in dong of foreign bonds must go up. If we're going to hold both of these in our portfolio, right? If we're not going to have a sale of all foreign bonds, right? We're going to start to sell them, and it's going to put pressure on the exchange rate, which is what equalizes then these two returns. Because obviously, when the Vietnamese central bank changes its interest rate, it doesn't change the interest rate in Bhutan. Right? So now, just based on the interest rates, we're going to have an incentive to start shifting our portfolio, and exactly that is going to exert this pressure on exchange rates. Right? Now, we can go through an example here, sort of step by step, so how this interest rate parity condition holds. So here we're going to be, this is then, I should change this example, because we're in Vietnam. I come from a German university, but I'm a U.S. American. So what is domestic here and what is foreign, right? So now with the Vietnamese German, I did a good job with my slides. You see, I put in to make
Yeah. Nice.
Just to make so now we're all honorary Germans.
Yeah.
Okay? Even me. So we want to compare the return of buying a German bond versus buying a US bond. Right? So we're going to compare an arbitrage option, just like the example I did on the board, with gold between Ho Chi Minh City and Can, or gold in Ho Chi Minh City or Vietnam and Bhutan. So what's the return of investing X euros in German bonds? Well, after 1 year, the bond matures. It pays us back the original X amount of euros that we invested, plus the interest on the X. Right, so the domestic interest rate of IT. We have an alternative available. We could buy US bonds. But when I go to buy a US bond, right, Donald Trump is not going to take the euro. You know? Right, so we have to first exchange our X euros into US dollars at the exchange rate ET. How many dollars we get per euro. So this gives us the amount of dollars from our investment of X euros.
That's
all right. We buy the US bond, and after 1 year, we get our the bond matures, so we get our investment back, X times ET, is the number of dollars that we originally invested, that comes back, plus the interest, right? And we earn the interest rate, IT star, that's the US interest rate, which might be different from our European interest rate, the interest rate on our German bonds. But at this point in time, we're comparing the return after 1 year in dollars with the return after 1 year in euros. These are two things that we're comparing. In English, we say comparing apples and oranges when we compare two things that are different. You can't compare an apple and an orange. Right? You can compare two different apples. Is the apple bigger, smaller, sweeter? Right? You can compare different oranges. It's funny. In German, they have the same expression, but in the United States, we have Florida and California. We have some citrus fruits. There's no oranges. Oranges don't grow in Germany. So the expression in German is to compare apples and pears. Right? You can't compare apples and pears. Right? So we have to bring our return in US dollars. We have to turn this into an apple. We have to find a common denominator between these two. And so what we do is in 1 year, we will convert these US dollars to euros. Now what's important here is the exchange rate after the investment matures might and likely will be a different exchange rate than when we purchase these bonds. Exchange rates from 1 year to the next are likely to be different. So we then divide through by the exchange rate. The inverse of the exchange rate tells us how many euros we get per dollar. So now we have two potential investments. This is the return plus principal after 1 year of investing X euros into US bonds, and this is the return in euros after investing X euros into German bonds. Okay? If one is higher than the other,
Arbitrage.
right, which one are you going to buy? Well, you're going to engage in arbitrage. You'll buy the one with the higher return, and you'll try to sell, or maybe you can short sell, right? If you have access to financial instruments, the one with the lower return. And if you can engage in short selling, you could magnify this to infinity. Right? But so what actually happens here? The moment that you start trying to engage in arbitrage here, right, if I star is higher, you're going to start buying dollars to take advantage of the higher US interest rate. But it's not just you who notices that the return is higher. Everybody does. Everybody's selling euros to get dollars. And that's going to, we're selling euros to get dollars, that's going to reduce the value of our currency, the euro. It's going to push down ET. And so if you just look at these two, if before this return was higher than this, we're going to start buying this, and we're going to keep buying this. It's push pressure on ET to fall, and there's still going to be pressure. We're going to keep buying until ET is reduced such that this return is exactly equal to this return. It's of course independent of the amount X of euros that we invest, so it must be true that this holds. Right? And it seems, sometimes we have sort of a worrisome, I don't know. We assume that, so it must be true that. How does this really work? Let's, I gave you sort of the mechanism of. We would start, of moving towards equilibrium. We would take advantage of this return differential and would start selling our euros to buy dollars, and many others investors would engage. I like this is always reminds me of my favorite economics.
I just have an idea.
Yeah.
If we here today, so we have more of interest rate with different maturity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have any idea about the expectation for the exchange rate for different market? Is it?
At different
You can see here. In here we say dollars, USD, and euro.
yeah.
So I imagine different market and different more of the interest rate. So
So different markets having a different interest rate for the same security, kind of like gold in Bangkok and gold in Ho Chi Minh City. Yeah. So then that same logic would apply.
Yeah.
And this is and in terms of, we also, you can think of interest, yeah, so.
Yeah. I just want to have an idea about the expectation, because we can compare the maturity, different market,
So-
if having any gap, so we can find out the gap,
Yeah.
and we have some idea about the expectation after 1 year, 2 year, or something based on the maturity
Of interest rates, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have an idea about that.
So yeah, so we're gonna look at that, then, today we're gonna look at, consumption, and then tomorrow we're going to look at, and this is gonna be in the yield curve. And the yield curve is what is going to take interest rates of bonds of different maturities, right? I do a little picture and express this then as an annualized interest rate, and it's going to tell us, right? There's good reasons why the interest rate of a 10-year bond could be on an annual basis be different than the interest rate on a 1-year bond. Right? And because there's good reasons why that could be the case, that's going to tell us something about what markets expect to happen over the future.
Yeah.
Right? Just like you can think of it here, we can have a difference in interest rates between countries, and there's a good reason for that. And what this tells us is it tells us about what markets think about exchange rate movements over the next year. Right? So that's, we have right, so if this term is positive, we'd have an expectation of appreciation. That the currency is expected, our currency is expected to increase in value. So when we compare, right, you can think of now.
Yeah, because I've just read some economics, the title on economics paper. And I got the announcement that Madame Lagarde informs about the expectation, need to manage the expectation. So besides with at the same time with the target about inflation or interest rate or something, just at the target, and they need to manage the expectation about the citizens. So I just wonder how we can have any idea to take a look on how expectation can be managed. So I don't know if we have any data to.
Yeah, so that's exactly the key points of the New Keynesian model. We're talking exactly about inflation expectations, and we'll see why this idea of managing inflation expectations is so very important. And it's going to be crucial. That's going to link up to what we have. You can already see expectations, the importance of them here. Right? But the way that the model works, the Mendel-Fleming model, is we take these as given and fixed, exogenous. So we're essentially assuming that exchange rate expectations are perfectly managed.
Yeah, because I also compared to the Vietnamese. I also compared to the economy and policy in Vietnam, and central banks also inform us that we have the target for inflation, maybe around 3% or something. But this may be the nature and the factors. sometimes in announcement, but the actual maybe I found that every year is inflation is about 6 to 7%, not 3% as they want to catch up.
Yeah.
So I don't know how how to get the idea about the inflation expectation, manage the inflation, and how is working on the in the economy. So
I mean, this
I
is
just want to take a deep insight, and I want to figure
Yeah.
out how it's run around.
Yeah, so we can talk about that for a minute, because this relates to so many parts of,
yeah,
of,
yeah,
of the
yeah,
course.
yeah. Thank you. I just
If you look historically, this is a problem or an issue that all central banks face. It's perhaps one of the most central points. And, you know, what we saw in the 1970s in many countries, but especially in the United States, we saw the problem of inflation expectations becoming unable.
yeah.
And the way this works is if you have, this is the whole point of the Phillips curve that we're looking at. If you have, say, a situation where we have, let's say, expectations. Let's say inflation, people expect 3% inflation. So the central bank says 3%, and our expectations align with that. So when we go to apply for a job or to negotiate our wages, right, for the next year, well, over the course of the year, the wage that I would receive is going to be worth less and less, right, each month, each week, whenever I get paid because of inflation. So I want to negotiate my wage to take into account, right, the inflation that I expect. Okay, if I expect 3% inflation, right, then I'm going to negotiate a little bit higher wage. All right. Now, let's say that inflation actually turns out to be 7%. Right? What happens? Well, the company that we work for is selling its products at prices that haven't increased by 3% over the course of the year, but by 7%. So their revenue goes up.
Yeah.
They have a contract with us to pay a wage where our wage only goes up by 3%.
Only 3%.
Right? But prices have actually gone up by more. So this means relative to the goods that they sell, our labor has become cheaper.
Yeah.
Right? So what does this mean for companies? Workers cost less. Right? I'm going to hire more workers. I can produce more. This is one of my costs. I'm seeing, because inflation has turned out to be higher than expected, a reduction in the marginal cost of production. So I'm going to end up producing more, hiring more workers. So now if we think about this from a macroeconomic perspective, what's happened? We have a surprise inflation, and this surprise inflation boosts production, boosts the economy, reduces unemployment. Right? So this seems like a very good way, right, to help a country out of a recession. Right, so what happened?
And one more thing about the current status in Vietnam, it's about the first 8 months of this year, maybe about total 2.8 thousand billion Vietnam dong is pouring into the economy by government. So I don't know if it's the expansion in monetary policy or not.
So say that against the amount of currency in circulation has increased, or what happened?
Because our government, central bank, pouring some money into the economy.
Yeah, okay, so increase the money supply.
Increase the money supply. So that is one of the money policy we went through the lecture. So I don't know if have any multiple impact on that action, because our government informed that they want to speed up the growth, economic growth, maybe to decrease. I think over 10% for incoming years.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the way they want to push up. As you have just said to us
Yeah.
about the inflation can push up the
Yeah.
works and private portion or something. So I think it's one of the way. But I have any negative impact or something
Yes,
that
that's what I
can,
was just going to talk about. So the
Yeah.
negative effects that we had there,
Yeah.
that we experienced in the 1970s,
Yeah.
because what, and then I'll come back. It's
Yeah,
a little bit
Many-
more nuance of what you said. So what happened in the 1970s? So we economists presented this to governments, so in the United States and in Germany, and as a menu, essentially, so the central bank, if you want to increase growth and lower unemployment, just increase the inflation. Right? And we have so the Chancellor of Germany, here he's on a coin, right? He took this, he understood our message, and he came to the conclusion that it seems the German people could do better with higher inflation, 5% inflation, than high unemployment. Right? This, I mean, inflation is maybe not great, but unemployment are individual people that don't have jobs. So I'd much rather we have a little bit higher inflation, right, and a lot fewer people that don't have jobs. Right? Okay, so what happened? So we had then higher inflation in many Western countries than expected. So now next year rolls around. So right, this past year, you expected 3%, and when you were negotiating your wage, you know, entered into your wage negotiation calculation, this 3% inflation that you expected. But surprise, inflation turned out to be 6%. So this next year comes around. What are you going to do? The central bank says, no, 3% inflation. Okay. So, right, maybe you'll believe the central bank. Right? So 3% inflation, you negotiate into your wage right calculations. And then it turns out to be 6% again.
Because
Just wait a second. Just wait a second. Right? So the first year, you expected 3%, and it turned out to be 6% after the fact. No? This next year, there's many reasons, but I'll believe them again. So I negotiate, I only expect 3% again. But then it turns out again to be 6%. Now this third year comes along. Are you still going to believe the 3%? Maybe. And if they do it again, at some point in time, you know what's going to happen? When you go to negotiate your wage, you're going to be, yeah. The central bank says 3%, but we all know it's going to be higher. And now what happens? Now, if you negotiate into your wage 6% inflation, and 6% inflation does come about, firms see their revenue go up by 6%, but their costs also go up by 6%. This means that now labor isn't relatively cheaper. Their marginal costs haven't gone down this time. So they don't hire more workers, they don't produce more. So now we're in a situation where we don't have this increased production, or this increased growth, or this decreased unemployment. We just have higher inflation. So what could you do? Well, okay, people are expecting 6%. What if we do 9% and surprise them with that? Okay, maybe that'll work. And then the next year, what are you going to do? You'll expect 9%, and they'll have to come with 12% inflation. Do you see where this is going? Right, it's going to be inflation running out of control. Right, and so what we saw in the 19. We saw in the 1970s.
Wow.
We saw that instead of inflation moving like this menu, if you choose higher inflation, you get lower unemployment. So we have a Phillips curve. We saw that inflation just spiraled out of control. And we ended up in a situation where we had employment just as high as it was in the beginning of the 60s, but now instead of 1% inflation, we had 11% inflation. And bringing inflation back down was a very painful experience. Why was it painful? So now we're going in, we've had a couple of iterations, we now expect 12%. And the central bank needs to bring inflation down. So you negotiate your wage for 12% inflation, but the central bank then actually only produces 9% inflation. It's trying to bring inflation down. What does this mean? Prices only go up by 9%, but the costs to firms of workers go up by 12%. This means workers have become much more expensive. The marginal cost of production for firms goes up. So they produce more, workers are more expensive, and they hire fewer workers. So unemployment goes up.
Yeah.
So to bring inflation back down, this disinflation, then we have to go through a recession. In the United States,
Crisis.
went through here. Just look at the growth of production in the United States. These bars are periods of recessions. This is older, pull up the
Crisis.
and we see that ending this inflation, we have to go through 2 recessions in a row in the United States. It's called the Paul Volcker. And you look now, instead of growth, we had output was flat for like no growth for like 6 years. Very, very high unemployment. Interest rates then, right? The central bank had to bring inflation down. That means instead of expanding the money supply, it had to contract the money supply.
Yeah, I heard
We saw the liquidity effect yesterday, so decreasing this money supply means increasing the interest rate. So the interest rate in the United States went up to 10, 15, 20%. But if you're trying to take out a credit, a loan, that's very expensive. Also, so less investment. So this whole thing's down. So, right, that's why we've come to think. So there's some danger here. How did this become then so painful at the end? Well, because we had these expectations of 12% inflation in this last iteration of the story. So central banks, if we would have just stayed down here, if we could have just kept people's inflation expectations at 3%, we wouldn't have to have gone through this extremely painful period of no growth, of double recessions to bring inflation back under control. So we need to manage expectations. And so now comes the difficult part. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing you would think, well, if you promise 3% inflation, just deliver 3% inflation. That's a pretty good way to manage expectations. Promise something and follow through your promise. Okay, fair enough. But we also saw there are many reasons why the central bank should respond. For example, right, so increasing the money supply. Right, you can think of everything else being equal. If money supply goes up, we'd think prices would go up. Right? So, just as an example, if you give me twice as much money, I have more purchasing power. I'm wealthier. If we double the amount of dong that everyone in Vietnam has in their pockets, is Vietnam producing anymore? No. So we can't be wealthier in terms of being able to afford more goods. The amount of goods we have here in Vietnam stays the same. We just now have twice as much money, right, per good, which means we have to give twice as much money to buy a good. Right? Prices have gone up. Right? So if we increase the money supply, we might just expect prices to go up to this delete inflation. Right? So that would be why your first intuition is, well, they've increased the money supply here in Vietnam, so this might, be inflationary. 3% is what they promise. That's our target. Inflation has been higher. Maybe this is consistent. That's true. You know? That's a very good way to think about it. We also saw though yesterday there might be some times when it's good or when it makes sense for the central bank to increase the money supply. Let's say there is growth. We have more goods, more transactions.
Yeah.
Right? And you need more money, right, to facilitate the growth in our economy. Very true. So everything else being equal, the growth rate of the money supply should follow the growth rate of the real economy. Right? So, you know, if we have growth, you know, if we have 10% growth in Vietnam, we're going to need the money supply. If real growth in the economy increases to 10%, we're going to need inflation, or no, we're going to need the money supply to increase as well, even if inflation stays constant.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you heard about the plan to build up the international financial center in Ho Chi Minh.
I've heard a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just got an idea that is it the money supply is preparing for that.
Right. You know,
Yeah, because we talk about the transaction and something about the maybe liquidity or the demand in the domestic currency. So they just prepare for that huge demand if the center after finish the center and the other person foreigner can come to Vietnam and demand for domestic to invest more. Yeah. I just have an idea if is it correct.
I mean, the question would be, you know, how big is that compared to the Vietnamese economy? This, you know, financial sector. It's you know, building up a new financial sector, and then in Ho Chi Minh City, that's a very big, right, development.
Yeah.
But like relative to the production of the GDP of Vietnam, like, would that be enough to justify an increase in all of the currency of the country by a large percent? Right? It has to be a very big financial center.
Yeah. Which I also wonder about that, but I follow the information about the money supply and have just through a month in this year they pour in maybe the amount maybe 20% of GDP. So
Okay.
I think that total the money pouring to the economy is about 20%. So I don't know if is it matching with we can have any idea if it matching to the size of transaction related to the new center financial center. I think any link to link all the information together.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a good thing to think of. So one thing we're going to start thinking about, so how, right, this expression, you know, the money supply is increased by 20% of GDP. You mean yearly GDP or
yearly.
quarterly GDP or monthly
Yearly.
GDP?
Average yearly.
Yearly GDP.
Yeah.
So why is that? It's a number like to give us like a size, but right, if we think of right, there's an expression, an older equation, a money velocity, and this is related to this transaction demand that we had yesterday. So this is just an identity, and if we think of right, price, number of transactions. Money supply, and this is called the velocity of money, which is how often a currency note is exchanged. And so the idea here is if we look at like, you know, if we have, so this is the number of transactions per unit of time, and this is the velocity per unit of time. So if we think of like let's say, let's make our economy simple. Let's say we have 100 sales of 1 kilogram of rice per year. That's our entire economy, right? The course of the year, we sell 100 1 kilogram bags of rice. Okay? What's the price of a kilogram of rice? Good price?
1 kilo.
1 kilogram of rice.
20.
I don't know exactly, but also like I found I bought 5 kilogram of rice with 90,000.
590, so let's say 1 is 20,000.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 20,000.
So 20K. So this means in our economy, our nominal yearly GDP is right,
2,002.
2 million.
Yeah.
2 million BND is our annual nominal GDP.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's say
Money
the
supply.
total money supply, the money that we have in circulation. Let's say we just had we have 2 20,000 VND banknotes, right? So the total money supply of 40,000 Vietnamese banknotes. Well, this means that these two pieces of currency, okay, each bag costs 20,000, so each one of these has to be used 50 times per year. Right? So you think about like the money that I have, I'm going to pay at the canteen, I'm going to go there, and they go buy something else. How often does this change hands in a year? Right? So here we have a velocity of then 50. So each unit of currency gets used 50 times per year. Right? And we see then here 50 times 40,000, we get then 2 million BND. Right? It's just an identity, it works on both sides. Right? Now, let's assume that this velocity stays constant, and let's assume first the number of transactions stays constant. Now, if we increase M,
Increase price.
price has to increase.
If price
Right? We
increase.
keep our behavior, the velocity of the same of transactions, so this has to change. Right? The price has to go up.
So linked to inflation.
Right? So if you do this and we can take the log, so log of MT plus the log ET equals the log of PT plus the log of YT, and if we calculate the derivative with respect to time, log t will change the rate, so this would be we'll call this mu money growth rate. I'd assume this is constant, so that has a growth rate of 0, equals the growth rate of prices is inflation, and the growth rate of GDP would be our growth.
Oh,
No? Right, so now we get, right, so this is your question. The question is, so if the growth rate is going up, right, then we can keep inflation constant,
Yeah.
and then with the money growth rate going up.
I
But
see.
the question on here, right, is, right, how, if this goes up, is it just consistent with that? Is it consistent with this? A little bit of both? That's gonna depend on a lot of factors. But
Yeah.
you could think of so our money growth rate, if this increases by, so what's so you said the increase in the money supply was 20% of annual GDP. But what's the size of the money supply? The stock of money, is is the money, all the dong in circulation, is that, the total amount of dong. Here we had 40,000 dong in circulation. That was just a small fraction of our annual nominal GDP.
Yeah.
It's usually much larger.
Yeah,
So that was-
that why I've just shown it. We see about the velocity.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to consider about the percent of money supply because 20% I think it's so much.
Yeah, but the question is, it's not a 20%, necessarily 20% increase in the money supply. That's what we need to know. How much is the money supply increased by? Relative to itself, not relative to GDP, right? So,
On a million, thousand million, 2.8 thousand million Vietnam dong.
okay, and how large is the money supply?
That is the money supply. That is the money supply.
Okay, and how large is the increase?
Oh, so sorry. That is the increase.
That's the increase.
The
So now we need
total.
to see how large is relative to everything else. Right, so that's the whole, so how large is the money supply in total in Vietnam? Is this a large increase or a small increase?
Small 140,000 compared to 2.8 compared to 140. So
So,
it's small.
140 is the size of the entire money supply? Or,
Yeah. Just
okay, so you have the whole money supply, you do have that number.
yeah.
Okay, so 140, so 2.8, 140,
2.8 over 140, so just small.
that's gonna be like 1.8
Oh,
or
yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that, 1.8%, right?
Yeah,
So,
I see.
right, so we have a money supply, a growth rate, an increase. So this is increasing by 1.8 percentage
I
points,
see.
right? So if growth doesn't change, we would expect in the long run for this to increase inflation by 1.8 percentage points, right? If growth increases by 1.8 percentage points, then inflation could stay constant with just this effect. Yeah? So that's how I would
Yeah.
approach that.
Yeah, because many persons I talk with them about the money supply, the huge amount compared to us.
Yeah.
But when you show us how to say in the growth percent, so I think that I have another solution, another answer for them. It's not going with the inflation, so not worry so much.
Yeah, because
not
this number
not to
doesn't
worry.
sound
Yeah,
like that
not to
large,
worry.
because you say 20% of
Yeah,
annual GDP,
I see.
that sounds like a big number, right? And it is a big number, but there's a lot of money out there to begin with, so is it really that much of an increase?
Yeah,
The question is
Thank you.
really, let's say I tell you that there's a person out there who made an additional 100,000 US dollars last year. I wish that person was me, right? That would be, why? Because that would be a lot of money for me. That would be a lot of money relative to what I have, to what I earn. What if I tell you this person is Elon Musk? Relative to his wealth, relative to what he earns, an increase by 100,000, that's not a change at all. That would be for him essentially things being constant. I mean, he earns probably like $1 billion or $5 billion a year. So if it's 5 billion plus 100,000, that's an increase of 0.000001 percentage points. So that's not a big change. So you do like relative to the base. You know? That's why this in terms of growth rates is important, right?
Growth rate important.
Now this assumption, so this is a very old equation. It's called the quantity equation, and this goes back 100 some years, if not longer, depending on your perspective. Remember I talked about how money demand shocks started to pick up in the 80s, which is also why we started to think about interest rate targeting for monetary policy.
Yeah.
Another way to interpret a money demand shock is surprise changes in velocity. How often do we use a bill, right? We have a reduction in velocity here compared to when I was at the university 2 years ago. You know how I know that? 2 years ago, everybody was buying their food with cash.
Yeah.
You had to use cash to buy your food. Now, most people don't use cash. I see them showing their cell phone to the cashier, right? Which means, right, each bill, piece of currency is right, changing hands less frequently, right? Because we're doing lots of transactions directly. So now the question is, money supplies, is cash currency really the way we should be measuring it today? Right?
I see.
Right? Because this money supply, this velocity, we add it here. If we add that term in here, that's going to change things. It's no longer a zero, right? And if we see a velocity going down, right, that's going to right, be
I see.
right?
Yeah. I see. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I have some ideas, and thank you so much.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right then. Where was I? Yeah, so
Sorry to.
no, it's that's the idea of this this class and these models in general, as I said, is to have a set of different tools. I'll look at your review, but you go ahead. Have a set of tools that you can then apply to understand what contemporaries, what people around you, politicians, newspapers alike are saying, right? And it's not, the whole point here is never, and that's the most important thing, because I said we don't have a settled body of conclusions. It's not like I can approach any statement you say and say this is right or this is wrong, or their claim, I can't, that the central bank is wrong, the central bank is right. We can't really do that. What we can do is try to present, the arguments to understand, right, the context. We came, even with this one equation, this increase in money growth rate could cause inflation. It could not cause inflation. It depends on how these things move. But now we have like a straightforward framework to interpret and understand, these arguments, right? And then we can talk to people at the central bank or right? So I really think it's gonna, because if it boosts growth a lot, then but if this growth doesn't happen, or we have this increase in money supply, on the one hand we have increase in growth from the financial center, on the other hand we have a decrease in growth because of this person in Washington D.C. that's increased our tariffs, right? So that might then, right, reduce growth. So maybe this will cause inflation, not because the plan with statements with the financial center aren't right, but because there's something else happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, but now we have a consistent way of thinking about that relationship.
Yeah.
And there are other consistent ways, right? And that's also, we're going to move beyond this simple idea when we look at the new Keynesian model, right? And also have a different, right? A different suite, a different model in there that we can think about.
Yeah.
All right, so we get this interest rate parity equation, right? That simply tells us that the returns on these two investments have to be the same. Right? And the logic that I gave you is if they're not the same, then we and everyone else are going to try to take advantage of the investment with the higher return. Right? So hence you must always have this and hold inequality. But what happens in reality? Right? Like, I'm not running between Ho Chi Minh and Bangkok with gold. Right? Like, is this like a nice thought experiment? Right? But how does this happen in reality? If you look at the massive amounts of people in the financial industry and these investment companies, most of what they're doing, certainly if they see, is to find violations of equalities like these. If there's an arbitrage opportunity, that means, right, there's money lying on the table. And if I work in the financial industry, my whole job is right, to grab that money that's lying on the table. Right? So the moment there's a tiny little bit of difference here, you're going to see large shifts in financial markets to try to take advantage of that. And so you're going to see very quick response, quick changes in the exchange rate. So if you see a difference in, why is the exchange rate dong to dollar, if we look at like large banks, is that exchange rate at any moment in time different in Hanoi than in Ho Chi Minh City? Probably not, because if it is, right, it's the same Bangkok Ho Chi Minh gold story, except we don't have to physically take like the gold to Bangkok, right? If we want to move dollars and dong between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, we press a button, and instantly, a nanosecond, millions, billions, trillions of dong can be moved between these two places. So the second there's a tiny difference here, people in the financial industry, here and of course abroad, see that, take advantage of that, right, and close it. So, we have a whole industry that's designed to maintain this, right? And the story behind high frequency trading is this, if you've heard of high frequency trading, right, have you heard of high frequency trading, right? Is this, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are, this is a lot of computer-based algorithm sort of trading, and a lot of it comes down to identifying violations of no arbitrage conditions on like a nanosecond, millisecond sort of basis, right? So there's huge amounts of computer power being run to make sure that, right, this isn't, because if we think of historically, again, think of the gold price. If the gold in Bangkok, or let's say like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City was a different price, if we go back 100 years, how quickly could we take advantage of that? We have to, buy gold here in Ho Chi Minh City and get up to Hanoi somehow. 100 years ago, fastest way is maybe a boat, right? Boats back then probably take like a couple days to get all the way up to Hanoi, right? Maybe like a boat from the 1920s from Ho Chi Minh, that would take a couple days probably, right? Vietnam's a big country, right? Okay, so this would mean at any given point in time, we could expect this to not hold, or the gold price would be different, in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. But as soon as we got two different, it would take a couple of days, and gold traders would equalize out the price. And their whole job of being a gold trader is to know what the gold price is in different places and to move gold around accordingly. But it would always, they would have to physically load the gold on a boat and move it up there to take advantage of these price differences. Now, when we do, physically change things, right? Now we could take, an airplane. If there's a price of gold in Hanoi is different than Ho Chi Minh City, right? I just go to the airport and I'm there very quickly, right? In a couple hours, right? Depending on how long it takes me to get to the airport, right? Then if we do electronic trading, right? I don't actually have to trade the physical gold, right? I can maybe trade some derivative or some financial instrument, and I could do that also with a computer. So now, right, it wouldn't take a couple of days or a couple of hours, it's now a couple of seconds. Right? So we have more and more evidence, or more and more evidence, but these arbitrage conditions, no arbitrage conditions, hold more and more strongly. All right, so we take it as given, the expected future exchange rate. So this is a kind of question. We think about inflation expectations being well anchored. We can think of this as something similar. So we have some given exchange rate for the future. We can rearrange this equation to now having the exchange rate being determined by the interest rate differential. So if the interest rate here at home goes up, the exchange rate goes up. Our currency appreciates. Okay? As our interest rate goes up, investment here becomes more attractive, so many people start selling their currencies to buy dong, to buy bonds, to take advantage of our higher interest rate. So everybody's trying to buy dong. That's going to drive the price of dong up. Our currency appreciates. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, for example, like firms try to like buy something in Vietnam, but the owner of the company requests them to buy with Vietnam currency. So this means like we can raise the dollar.
Say one more time, so the company that's trying to buy something, can you repeat that for me? I didn't quite understand.
Like for example, like how can I say we have a policy like request the form like in policy one if they want something in Vietnam they have to buy with
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's always the question. You can think about pricing in home currency or pricing in foreign currency, right? You know, so the policy is it a government policy?
I don't know.
Or so because you can, I certainly know. So because it would be, you know, you could think of, you know, firms. I mean, in the end, like for a firm, but think about it. I'm a company here in Vietnam. I produce goods. I have to, you know, I buy, you know, products from around the country. I have to, you know, and I have to pay that in dong. I have to pay my workers in dong. Right? So if I sell my products and I get dong when I sell my products, then I can make these calculations. Okay, how much am I going to sell my products for? I'm going to be producing the next year. I'm going to have, I'm going to sell each T-shirt at X thousand dong. I'm going to pay my workers each this many dong. All right, I can do that calculation. What happens if, okay, so I'm going to sell my T-shirts in dollars. Okay, I'm going to choose. How many dollars should I choose? Well, now it's kind of difficult because I need to pay my workers in dong. So if the dollar increases in value against the dong, all right, super. I get dollars for my T-shirts. So I'm going to buy. I get more dong for that, so I can pay my workers the same price, and I get some extra profit. What if the dollar loses in value against the dong? Oh, where am I going to? I still need to give my workers dong, the dong that I promised them, but I got dollars from selling the products. So here I now have currency risk, exchange rate risk. I need to find some way, and there's, you know, insurance and there's hedging and things you can do to reduce or to get rid of this risk or to insure against this risk, right? But there's always a problem that I have costs that I need to pay in one currency. If my income is in another currency, you know, revenue because I'm selling it in a different currency. You know, if the exchange rate changes, that's going to that could be good, that could be bad. It's just a risk. The biggest, so you know, selling products is one thing, but the very much larger problem that we saw or have seen, continue to see, is firms that take out loans in foreign currency, because that tends to be a much larger quantity, and this has been very problematic. Right? So if you have, and this is you know, shown up in, we had an Asian financial crisis in the 90s. Right? This was from South Korea down through Indonesia. I'm not sure how bad that hit Vietnam, but a lot of companies who took out loans in dollars, right? So they had to pay back dollars, and when you have an exchange rate, if your currency depreciates, right? So I'm selling, you know, I'm producing mostly in Vietnam, and I'm selling mostly in Vietnam. So the revenue I'm generating is in dong, but I owe these international capitalists dollars to pay back their loan. And if the dong depreciates in value, I can't afford to get the dollars that I need to pay them. Right? So then I default on the loan, or I go bankrupt. Lots of current companies do this, or have to do this. This puts further pressure on the currency, and this led into a self-fulfilling or a spiral. So we had lots of companies defaulting on foreign currency denominated loans because their currencies had lost value, and as they tried to pay this, or there's been fire sales, so companies these financial companies that own stock. Wait a second. I've given loans in dollars to all these companies in Indonesia. They can't pay that back, right? I'm going to sell my shares, right? And I'm going to sell them as, I just need to get rid of it. I don't care if I take a loss. And this caused, and then what do? I get, what's the currency in Indonesia? Does anyone know? I forgot it. I'm going to call it dramas. Yeah, right? And I'm going to sell these, so I get dramas for my shares in this company. I'm going to sell them to get dollars. Right? What am I doing now? Like I'm further depreciating the currency. Lots of sales of the local currency to get dollars as foreign investors pull out. And what does this mean? Well, those companies that before were doing okay, even with the currency depreciation, with their loans they're taking out a dollar. Now, even further depreciation, now they're in trouble too. And now they start to default. And then there's a massive sale of these. So you end up seeing this spiral in terms of depreciation of the currency, puts foreign currency denominated loans at risk. And if there's a lot of them, then the resulting bankruptcies and sales of these companies can put the currency at further depreciation risk, which then cause further bankruptcies and sales of these companies. Right, so historically that's been the much bigger danger is just the magnitude of the financial sector. But there's the same sort of underlying risk, when you produce and have costs in a country in one currency, but your sales, the income, the revenue you receive is in another currency. Then you are the person who's taking the risk.
Yeah.
I'm not.
This case just remind me about my experience when I work in industry, because when I'm working in procurement, purchasing department,
Yeah.
and some company when working with us, when we share the contract, they want to get the payment by USD, although they have factory in Vietnam, and for them that Vietnamese government don't allow for that.
Yeah.
If your factory in Vietnam, you need to all transaction must be Vietnam dollar. Don't allow for USD if both factory in Vietnam. Don't allow.
This is okay. But
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, that,
probably,
yeah.
Because
Because
take a look at that. Probably,
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
experience, maybe.
Mm.
And see. Yeah, so we had there's Vietnam was hit as well, and I'm sure that it's probably for the exact same and a very similar what's the whole financial crisis. And it's a lot of this is financial.
Yeah,
this is a
yeah.
liberalization to attract capital from abroad from foreign governments. There's a lot of this is something that's seen in the literature. This is a dramatic and traumatic experience in the end of the 1990s. It informed a lot of policy. So although so even not knowing any of the specifics of why this comes, part of me thinking, I think this is probably informed from, even if Vietnam wasn't dependent on foreign currency denominated investment in the 1990s, like many other Southeast Asian countries. I suspect Vietnam, the economy is run a little bit differently, but that might not have been as big of a problem. Still, the economic officials in Vietnam saw what was going on and saying, this currency risk can be a big problem.
Yeah.
Let's just we can minimize this risk for everyone through regulation, which is what something you can do or is done, and you can do in an economy or in a country with a political system like Vietnam. It's a more difficult and some other countries, depending on the political system, but that seems like a, right, so, we'll just make that illegal, okay, right?
Yeah,
Then
legal.
that currency risk would disappear, right? But there's still, and this is always the, and this is what kind of went through yesterday when I was looking at the tariffs, this concept of pass through, right? So when you have, if you have this currency risk, right, how much do you pass this on to your prices, right? Do you keep a constant dong price, even if you produce here in Vietnam, not all of your supplies, your workers might be here in Vietnam, you pay in dong. Does your cotton, if you're producing a fabric, does that come from Vietnam, or does this cotton come from maybe Pakistan or India, or somewhere else?
Yeah.
There's a
All the
currency
import,
risk.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
a currency risk in terms of your costs there. So there's always in a global economy going to be some level of currency risk. And when you see, okay, we have a change in the exchange rate. So even though the rupee price of cotton hasn't changed, in terms of dong, it has. Okay, do I raise my dong price, right? Or do I just keep my dong price, and this means my profits go down a little bit because I have to pay more dong to get the rupees to buy the cotton in India. Right? So there's always still going to be some, you can't get rid of it completely. But that's,
Yeah. So I think that the big change in our economy in coming years, because I think many rules, many regular will change, because if we have we set a legal that don't allow transaction for foreign currency transaction within Vietnam. So when we open the international center, financial center, so many foreign capital come out and in daily. So the regulation will be changed, and I also excited to see what happened. So the big change, I think that the big change, because not only the financial market but also the industry, how the foreign company come to industry.
and I would be very, very interested to look at how the Vietnamese government is going to regulate foreign capital, in the sense of, if I'm a foreign investor and I want to invest in a Vietnamese company, okay, fantastic. This is going to support the Vietnamese economy. But when I loan money, when I invest money or resources into a Vietnamese company, is the amount written in the contract, is this dollars or is this dong? Because if you have lots of foreign capital coming in, and all of the contract, so what's owed by the Vietnamese companies and people, the foreign investors, if that's in a foreign currency, then you're importing a lot of currency risk. Right?
Just I also
Yes,
waiting for what
I'm
happened.
interested to see, because we've got plenty of experience in Asia in the 90s with this Asian financial crisis, caused exactly by financial liberalization and global foreign direct investment.
So based on your research experience about the research or something about the paper, so is there any resources that I can find the paper related to all the problem we have just talked? I want to
So,
refer some.
Send. Do you have my email address?
Yeah.
Should be, just send me an email, and then I'll send you like a couple of papers. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. So okay. So now we have right. This is how the exchange rate is going to be endogenized. It's going to depend on this interest rate. Remember, IS11, we have I and Y. So now if I changes, this changes the nominal interest rate. We just worked through what that does, but now we know that that's going to change our net exports. Right, so if our nominal interest rate at home goes up, this is going to make investment more costly, so our domestic private investment will go down, but, right, if the interest rate goes up, right, this also means investing in our country is more attractive. Foreign investors are going to come in. They're going to bid up the price of our currency. They're going to be buying dong in large quantities to invest at our higher interest rate. So this is going to appreciate our currency, which will have a negative effect on our net exports. Appreciate our currency means imports will be cheaper for us. So we're going to import, right? We've got a strong dong. We're going to be buying stuff from all around the world. And a strong dong has the disadvantage that this makes our goods expensive to the rest of the world, so our exports will go down. So now that's these other feedback mechanisms that we have from I to E to the net exports. And we can draw this, right? Just a simple picture. We have our interest rate and our exchange rate, right? And our interest rate parity condition that we have here is then simply a line, right? And this is the difference. If you did in the international economics course, if you did the interest rate or the exchange rate expressed differently in the other notation, you might have. Did you see like an interest rate parity condition before in the international economics course that you did?
Interest rate parity.
Does it ring a bell? No. Okay, but if you look back, you'll see that it's then this weird sort of curve shape, and that's because of this inverse. It's the inverse exchange rate that you learned from this other teacher. That's the advantage also of this notation, is that then the interest rate parity condition is just a line, right? And that's right, because otherwise, right, if we define the exchange rate differently, it would be the inverse of the exchange rate is related to this. And so if you map the inverse, that's going to be a weird curve, right?
I see. That's the idea for that.
Right, so if we can start off in a position, let's this point A, where our interest rate is equal to this foreign interest rate. If that's true, if I is equal to I star, then the current exchange rate is equal to this anchored future exchange rate. Right, so the current exchange rate is simply equal to this expected future exchange rate. So this would be like, we starting off in an equilibrium. We could also start off like at a point A. All right, now we can summarize our ISLM open economy model with 3 equations. We have the familiar IS equation. We have our money market equilibrium with money supply will give us the LM equation. And now we have an interest rate parity condition, right? That's going to then, right? So let's stop. The money market equilibrium equation determines the interest rate, right? Which feeds back into the IS, our goods demand. Now we also have a foreign exchange market, right? So a second financial market where the interest rate feeds into the exchange rate, which feeds into our net exports component. Right, so this gives us then, as I said yesterday, this second channel for monetary policy, namely the exchange rate channel.
Yeah.
I don't know. The old version where I hadn't done the graphics. English graphic for our interest rate parity. Much nicer. When the interest rate domestic is equal to the foreign interest rate I star, this means that the exchange rate then is equal to the expected exchange rate. That's simply our parity condition here. All right, so now for our ISLM, we can add Right, to get to LM, we could have another graphic over here. We would have the money market, our money demand and money supply. This gives us our LM curve, LM and IS. Right from the IS curve, we could put another picture down here and derive this from our goods demand. Right? But we've already done that, so let's move that into ISLM. And now we just have our new component over here, and that's this interest rate parity. Right? So now we see if a policy, right, if we have an expansionary fiscal policy, for example, we know it's going to lead to an increase in Y and an increase in I. Right? The increase in I is going to lead to an increase in the exchange rate, an appreciation in our currency. So expansionary government policy is going to lead to an appreciation. Right? Our currency is going to increase in value. Well, what does this mean in terms of our goods market as well? This is going to decrease our net exports. Right? Our currency is more expensive. We're going to buy more, right? It's more valuable, so we're going to import more. It's more expensive, so exporters are going to have a harder time selling our goods abroad. Right, so if we were to compare them in the goods market, we would see then this is going to lead to the appreciation, a decrease in net exports. We started off in a position where we had balanced trade. Right, the increase in government expenditures is going to lead to a decrease in net exports, so we'll now be running a trade deficit. Okay, contractionary monetary policy. If we reduce the money supply, right, we know this is going to have the liquidity effect. It's going to increase. It's going to increase the interest rate. An increase in the interest rate, the interest rate parity condition means investments in our country are more attractive. People are going to want to take advantage of them. They're going to buy our currency. That's going to drive up the price of our currency. It's going to be leading to an appreciation. With our currency being more valuable, right? If we started off with balanced trade, this is going to decrease our exports, increase our imports. So we're now also going to be running a trade deficit. Okay. Right, so if we look at U.S. budget deficits, we have to think about some fiscal policy approaches. In the 1980s, this is the beginning of the 80s, this is also this double recession time. We're coming out of this very high inflation that we just talked about, thanks to your question. So as we know the setting here, 2 double recessions, high inflation. So we have what they call the stagflation, stagnation, and inflation.
Yeah.
So some people argued that cutting taxes would stimulate economic activity. We can look at our ISLM, sure. So if we cut taxes, this is also expansionary fiscal policy. So this would tend to push up output. Okay. Right. This also has another consequence. So we see taxes went down. Corporate taxes and personal taxes. This led to a increase in debt, so we have a negative budget surplus. This is always, with these numbers here, right, budget surplus that's positive means a budget surplus. If a budget surplus is negative, that's the same thing as a budget deficit, right? So, I always, I still feels like if you're, is anyone here saving a lot?
Saving?
Saving, no.
Yeah.
Some people
Personally, you mean like?
Yeah, personally. So so you're saving. Are there people taking on debt, right? That's also savings. It's just negative savings, right? So everyone's, the answer is we're all saving. Some of us positive, some of us negative, some of us zero, but we all have a savings, right? It's a negative saving. Right? Yeah, Mom and Dad, I'm saving for my future, just negatively.
để đợi tôi ra cho tôi
Right.
nói.
But the current account deficit.
Right, so that's, so, we have we have a budget surplus, it's just a negative budget surplus. So this becomes more negative means it's a larger deficit, right? Okay, budget deficits to reduce taxes to boost the economy. Well, this boosting the economy, we saw this here, right? Expansionary fiscal policy, so lead to, push interest rates up, lead to an increase in the exchange rate. Right, and we see, right, maybe some of this GDP growth, some of this boosting in economic activity. Right? Employment rates, hard to see whether that doesn't seem to have gone down. Inflation came down, and this is the copy of inflation. And we see though, as inflation was coming down, at the same time we have these interest rates going up. Interest rates going up led to our real exchange rate in the United States going up. So in terms of goods, we have an appreciation of American goods. So we would get more foreign goods for U.S. goods. Trade surplus became negative. This means American goods became expensive. You'd have to give up more Vietnamese baskets of goods to get an American basket of goods. So less goods being bought from America, and the Americans are buying more goods from Vietnam because they get more Vietnamese baskets of goods for each American basket of goods. This increase in real exchange rate. So we see then here trade surplus negatively, right, so the absolute value went up. It's negative, which means we have a large trade deficit, right, building up there. So we have this double dip recession, is what these two recessions at the beginning, right after each other, begin the 80s are called. From an open economy perspective, we have the twin deficit of the 80s, because it was not only a large budget deficit, so negative surpluses, they also came along with very large negative trade surpluses. And this is actually kind of where, let's stop here take a little break, and then we'll finish this and
Yeah, thank
okay?
you.